The Price of Politics: How Donald Trump Put the Federal Reserve on the Ballot, a Dangerous American Innovation. America has always excelled at exporting ideas. Some were noble, constitutional government. Others were less so, financial excess dressed as innovation. In recent years it has developed a new product, unlikely to be welcomed abroad: the politicization of monetary policy. What was once an institutional taboo is now an open argument, conducted in public and with considerable theatrical flair. At the center of this experiment stands Donald Trump, a man who has never met a constraint he did not wish to renegotiate. Opposite him is the Federal Reserve, embodied by its chairman Jerome Powell. An unlikely symbol of resistance whose most radical quality is an insistence on being dull. What is at stake is not simply the level of interest rates, nor even the fate of one chairman. It is whether the world's most powerful economy still believes that some economic decisions should be shielded from the rhythms of electoral politics. Or whether, in an age of permanent campaigning, even money itself must learn to canvass. When interest rates learned to campaign, interest rates were not always political. For most of the post-war era they were deliberately removed from democratic competition. The logic was simple and hard-earned: inflation destroys trust, and trust is easier to lose than to rebuild. Independent central banks emerged not from technocratic vanity, but from repeated failures of political restraint. America learned this lesson late, but painfully. In the 1970s, presidents leaned on the Fed to keep credit cheap and growth humming. Inflation responded enthusiastically. It took the brutal medicine of the early 1980s, double-digit interest rates, mass unemployment, and a deep recession engineered by Paul Volcker, to restore credibility. From that point on, independence became orthodoxy. Donald Trump never accepted that orthodoxy. From his first days in office, he treated the Fed not as an umpire but as a misbehaving player. When markets rose, it was because of him. When they faltered, it was because the Fed was crazy, clueless, or insufficiently loyal. Interest rates, in Trump's rhetoric, were not macroeconomic instruments but political obstacles. In doing so, he transformed an invisible mechanism into a campaign issue. The question was no longer whether policy was appropriate, but whether it was sufficiently supportive of his agenda. The distinction mattered: Trump's economics, velocity over viability. Trump's economic worldview is built around speed. Growth must be fast. Markets must move up. Confidence must be constant. Long-term trade-offs are an irritant, not a guide. Monetary policy, in this framework, exists to lubricate momentum. Lower interest rates are therefore not a response to weak demand or subdued inflation, they are a statement of intent. They signal optimism, dominance, and control. If inflation threatens, it can be explained away. If debt piles up, it can be rolled over. Tomorrow is someone else's problem. This approach has undeniable political appeal. Voters feel immediate relief from cheaper credit. Asset prices rise. Paper wealth expands. The costs, distorted incentives, misallocated capital, inflationary pressure, are delayed and diffuse. Central bankers exist precisely to resist this temptation. They are tasked with denying politicians the sugar rush of easy money. It is not a popular role. Trump, who measures success by applause, sees this denial as sabotage. Jerome Powell, the accidental guardian. Jerome Powell did not seek to become a symbol. A former investment banker and lawyer, he was appointed precisely because he seemed unlikely to rock boats. He spoke carefully, dressed conservatively, and avoided grand theories. In another era, he might have enjoyed a quiet tenure. Instead, Powell has become the custodian of a principle under siege. By insisting that interest rates respond to inflation data rather than political pressure, he has come to represent something unfashionable: institutional self-restraint. This has not made him popular. Trump has attacked his competence, questioned his motives, and flirted publicly with the idea of removing him. None of this has altered Powell's manner. He continues to speak in the language of spreadsheets and probabilities, as if the storm around him were a minor inconvenience. That, ironically, is the point. Central bankers are supposed to behave as though politics is background noise. When they stop doing so, credibility vanishes. Wall Street's double vision: if Washington supplies the drama, Wall Street supplies the commentary. Publicly, financiers express concern about the erosion of the Fed's independence. Privately, many welcome the prospect of lower rates. Markets are pragmatic creatures. They dislike uncertainty. But they adapt quickly. Political interference becomes just another risk to be hedged, another volatility pattern to be traded. In this sense, Wall Street is less a victim than an accomplice. The real danger is not panic but indifference. Once investors assume that monetary policy will be influenced by electoral cycles, they begin to price it in. The loss of credibility is gradual, almost invisible, until it is not. The bond market's quiet rebellion: equity markets may cheer lower rates, but bond markets are less sentimental. Long-term investors care about inflation and credibility. When they suspect that monetary policy is being bent for political ends, they demand compensation. This takes the form of higher long-term yields. Governments find themselves paying more to borrow, even as central banks ease. The result is a perverse outcome: cheaper money today, costlier money tomorrow. America's ability to borrow cheaply rests on trust that its institutions will behave predictably. Undermine that trust, and even the world's largest economy begins to feel the consequences. The global dimension: the Federal Reserve is not merely America's central bank, it is the fulcrum of global finance. Its decisions ripple through emerging markets, commodity prices, and capital flows worldwide. When the Fed signals discipline, it anchors expectations far beyond American borders. Political pressure on the Fed therefore has international consequences. If the perception takes hold that U.S. monetary policy is subject to campaign imperatives, foreign investors will adjust. Not dramatically at first. A little more diversification here, a slightly higher risk premium there. Reserve currencies do not collapse, they erode. And erosion is hardest to reverse. Democracy versus discipline: critics of central bank independence often frame the issue as democratic accountability. Why should unelected officials wield such power? The answer lies in history, not theory. Democracy is excellent at expressing preferences. It is less adept at managing delayed consequences. Inflation control requires saying no today to avoid catastrophe tomorrow. Elections reward the opposite. Independence is therefore not an insult to democracy but a concession to its limitations. Weakening it does not empower voters, it exposes them to the costs of short-termism. Trump's instinct is to treat any constraint on executive will as illegitimate. The Fed's instinct is to treat constraint as responsibility. The clash was inevitable, the theater of intimidation. Trump's attacks on the Fed are not subtle. They are designed to intimidate, to shift the boundaries of what is considered acceptable. Even if Powell remains in place, future chairmen will take note. The precedent matters. Once it becomes normal for presidents to berate central bankers publicly, independence becomes conditional. And conditional independence is independence in name only. The most likely outcome: managed decay. The most plausible resolution is anticlimactic. The Fed eases slightly sooner than it otherwise would. Trump declares victory. Markets rally modestly. Powell insists that the data justified the move. No crisis erupts. No institution collapses. And yet something is lost. The taboo against political interference weakens. The line moves. Next time, the pressure will be easier to apply. Institutions rarely die dramatically. They are thin, fray and fatigued. Why boredom mattered. The Federal Reserve was designed to be boring because boredom fosters trust. Predictability calms markets. Restraint reassures investors. Independence allows long-term planning. By turning interest rates into a political talking point, Trump has made monetary policy exciting again. That excitement carries a price. Economies do not thrive on spectacle. They thrive on credibility. Interest rates, inconveniently, do not care who wins elections. Conclusion: the bill always comes due, America has embarked on a risky experiment, testing whether monetary policy can be bent to political will without consequence. History suggests the answer is no. The costs may not appear immediately. They rarely do. Inflation creeps. Trust leaks. Borrowing becomes more expensive. The adjustment, when it comes, is harsher than it needed to be. Trump's conflict with the Federal Reserve is therefore not about one man or one term. It is about whether America still believes that some institutions must be protected from politics precisely because they matter too much to politicized. If it forgets that lesson, it will relearn it the old way, slowly, painfully, and with considerable surprise at an outcome that was entirely predictable.